you're currently chairing the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors Defence Sector Group, which is in itself is as a name is a new group. But could you tell us a bit more about it? What is it, and what does it do?
Well, that's a good question. In that, it's for us. It's so first I should say to start with, I co-chair that actually with Laird Evans at the moment. So Laird, as you will know, is now based at the Abbey Wood team, the HFI cell there. And what happened there was, and I'll go real back a few months, maybe a year. So I found myself at work with a little bit of time on my hands, and I started delving in around the Institute's website. I don't know how I managed it, but I managed to find my way to a page which was on the various sector groups and the defence sector group. So it seemingly existed at the time, it's a year ago, and I read some of the text there about human factors integration in a defence context, and I didn't recognise it. It wasn't what I recognised as the job that we did in defence or the processes that we used, and so cheekily I just wrote back to the Institute and said, well, I've stumbled across this page. This doesn't seem to be right. I've taken the liberty of rewriting it. Perhaps if you get a chance to update it, you could throw this information up onto the website. And immediately the CEO at the time, Steve Barraclough, came back to me and said, "Oh, yes, the defence sector group has been a bit dormant for some time, and we're looking for people to pick that up and take it on." So I sort of unwittingly put myself in the limelight a little bit there, and so I had a chat to Steve. He subsequently left, and now we've got Norseman in position. What I suggested to him at the time is that it'd be a good idea to rejuvenate, bring back the defence sector group in the Institute. And certainly in my career, if I go back to the early stage of my career and I went to the Society conference, it was defence was a big theme. I would say it was 50% of the conference was talking around defence applications for human factors. Latterly, that's really tailed off, and I think defence kind of took less interest, I think, in the affairs of the Institute and the conference itself. So that's a shame, and I think Steve Barraclough and Norseman very keen to make sure that defence comes back and takes more interest in our Institute. So, but what I suggested to both of them was that rather than start another group, which would be largely populated by the same people that you and I work with across defence on a regular basis, we already have a thing called the Mod Industry, or it was called the Mod Industry HFI Working Group, which now actually, as you're probably aware, is been split into a Mod Industry HFI Liaison Group, which is a larger body which enables us to sort of exchange best practice and talk about successes and failures, and help maybe guide as best we can in a forum of that size the development process and techniques within a defence context. And also now we have an HFI steering group, which is a much smaller body, which is a little bit more focused on policy and standards for defence human factors integration. So I'd said, that we already have in existence this body. The Mod Industry HFI Liaison Group has a circulation of around about 60 people. Most of our meetings are around about 25, 30 people. We meet a couple of times a year. So we already have this. Can this not act as a defence sector group? Yeah. And the answer is yes. We've had to change our process a little bit, be a bit more open, so invite people from outside defence into that forum. But that's where we are, and so it's automatically become the defence sector group as well. For the any of the sector groups at the moment, there seems to be this effort by the Institute to, as I say, restart them to some extent, and re-establish new groups. So in fact, we had the first meeting, so it's really early days. We had the first meeting earlier this week of the sector group leads. So we had pharmaceuticals there, healthcare. There's one workspace, which is a slightly strange sector group, not really a sector as such. Defence obviously was there. There were probably a couple of others I can't recall at the moment. So So this was a meeting chaired by Norseman, chaired by the CEO, looking at how those sector groups can develop their own practices themselves, work across sectors, what they can contribute to the next year's conference, for example, and what initiatives each of those sector groups can bring to the Institute to really promote the practice of human factors in a very broad sense. So,
Cool.
so it's sort of early days. You will start to see some events from each of the sector groups advertised across the Institute's various media. So there'll be things like webinars. We're talking about possibly having debates and things run from sector groups about certain topics. So really giving something back into the Institute, but also outwardly looking as well, how we can promote human factors to society in general, really.
Yeah.